She was one of the most recognizable faces of the 90s. Stephanie Seymour wasn't just a supermodel, she was a symbol of glamour, confidence, and success. From gracing the covers of Vogue to walking for the world's biggest designers, it seemed like nothing could touch her. She lived the life most could only dream of: runways, fame, and whirlwind romances. But behind the flashing cameras and polished smiles was a very different story. One filled with heartbreak, pressure, and silent battles no one saw coming. As the fashion industry worshipped her image, Stephanie quietly struggled with the darker side of fame. The pressure to stay perfect, the scrutiny from the media, and the toxic expectations of the modeling world slowly started to take their toll. Even her personal relationships played out in the public eye, adding more fuel to an already growing fire. Her love life became tabloid headlines, and every misstep was magnified for the world to judge. But fame doesn't come with a warning label, and for Stephanie, the cost was higher than most could imagine. She was the dream girl of an entire generation, but inside, she was slowly fading. Her story isn't just about beauty and success, it's about what happens when the spotlight becomes too bright. The pressure to perform, the people she trusted, the silent moments when everything looked perfect on the outside, but she was crumbling on the inside. How did a woman with everything the world celebrates, beauty, fame, fortune, end up nearly losing herself? What was the turning point? And what did it take for her to find her voice again after everything tried to silence it? This is the untold truth of Stephanie Seymour. And it begins where the camera flashes stop. Stephanie Seymour's rise didn't happen overnight. She was just a teenager when she entered the modeling world, full of ambition and a spark that quickly caught the industry's attention. Born in San Diego, California, she came from a modest background far from the flashing lights of fashion capitals like Paris and Milan. But it didn't take long before photographers, designers, and major magazines began to notice her. By her late teens, she was already modeling for the biggest names in fashion, earning a spot in the elite world of supermodels. In the 90s, Stephanie wasn't just walking the runway, she was redefining what it meant to be a celebrity. She appeared in countless ad campaigns, worked with designers like Versace and Chanel, and became a muse for photographers like Richard Avedon and Herb Ritts. Her face was everywhere, her name was known around the world, and her style was emulated by millions. Alongside icons like Naomi Campbell and Cindy Crawford, Stephanie helped shape an entire era of fashion. But as her career soared, her personal life grew more complicated. Fame didn't protect her from pain, it often made it worse. Her relationship with Guns N' Roses frontman Axl Rose was one of the most public and intense chapters of her life. Their love story played out in music videos and headlines, but behind the scenes, it was anything but glamorous. The relationship became messy and controversial, and it pulled Stephanie into a spotlight that she couldn't control. The press focused on drama rather than the woman behind it all. With every photo shoot and every red carpet, the pressure to maintain a perfect image grew heavier. And while she smiled for the cameras inside, she was battling demons that no one could see. The fashion world, as beautiful as it may appear, was full of hidden dangers, expectations that could break even the strongest. For Stephanie, every step forward in her career seemed to come with an invisible cost. As the years passed, cracks began to show, but the world kept watching, expecting her to keep up the facade. What no one realized was that the girl who once lit up every room was starting to dim. And behind the luxury, the fame, and the designer gowns, Stephanie Seymour was slowly slipping away. As the spotlight stayed fixed on her, Stephanie Seymour began to feel trapped in a life that looked perfect from the outside, but was quietly unraveling within. Every move she made was watched, every misstep criticized. In an industry that demanded youth, flawlessness, and emotional detachment, Stephanie was only human. But being human wasn't part of the job description. The pressure to maintain a certain weight, look a certain way, and live up to impossible standards became overwhelming. There was no room for vulnerability, no safe place to fall. Behind the camera flashes, she was struggling to stay afloat, personally, emotionally, and mentally. Her image was everything, and the fashion world doesn't easily forgive aging, mistakes, or fragility. Even moments of joy felt temporary, often overshadowed by new rumors, new criticisms, or the weight of old wounds that never fully healed. As her modeling contracts kept her flying from city to city, the exhaustion set in, not just the kind that comes from work, but the kind that comes from constantly pretending to be okay. Meanwhile, in her personal life, new battles began to form. Stephanie became a mother, and the world shifted in unexpected ways. She wanted peace, a sense of grounding, but the chaos of fame never stopped knocking. Raising a family while still being seen as a fashion icon was like living in two separate worlds, and neither allowed her to fully breathe. She tried to hold both roles, but cracks deepened. Some saw her as the glamorous model, others whispered about the mess behind the curtain. Few bothered to look at the full picture. Then came tragedy. Loss. A kind of heartbreak that changes a person at the core. But even then, she was expected to keep showing up, looking perfect, saying the right things. The cameras didn't pause for grief, and the headlines never softened. The more she tried to pull away, the more they pulled her back in. As the years wore on, Stephanie faced a haunting question. Who is she without the fame? Was there still a woman behind the legend, or had she been buried beneath years of photo shoots, red carpets, and public expectation? The answers remained buried in silence, hidden behind a forced smile, as the world watched her every move, still waiting for her next fall. The world never stopped expecting more from Stephanie Seymour. Even as time moved on and the supermodel era began to fade, the weight of her past lingered like a shadow. She tried to stay present for her children, protect her family, and rebuild something real away from the noise. But the industry she helped define never really let her go. And the deeper she tried to retreat into her private life, the louder the echoes of her fame became. Whispers started again, stories in magazines, flashes of her face on tabloids, endless online comments judging her appearance, her choices, her silence. No matter how much she tried to stay out of the spotlight, it seemed the world still wanted a piece of her. Behind closed doors, she was trying to be a mother, to grieve, to heal. But in public, she was still Stephanie Seymour, the icon, the model, the woman everyone thought they knew. The real breaking point didn't come with a headline or a scandal. It came in quiet moments when no one was looking. The pressure to remain strong in the face of personal loss, the challenge of being seen as both a grieving mother and a fashion figure, it created a storm inside her that no one could see. And then came one of the darkest chapters of her life. The loss of her son, Harry. It was the kind of pain no parent ever prepares for, the kind that makes time stop. But the cameras didn't stop. The media didn't pause. Grief became something public, picked apart and analyzed, while all she wanted was space to breathe. Stephanie tried to keep it together, but the cracks were visible. Her appearances grew less frequent. Her smile felt different. She wasn't just carrying the weight of her own past now, she was carrying the pain of a mother's worst nightmare. Yet, even then, people speculated, assuming they knew her story just by seeing a photo. She stood at a crossroads, caught between who the world remembered her as and who she was trying to become. There were no easy answers. No guidebook on how to survive both fame and heartbreak. And as everything built toward a final tipping point, the world still watched, waiting to see if she would rise, or finally break. Just when it seemed like Stephanie Seymour couldn't be tested any further, another unexpected twist turned her world upside down. While she was still quietly mourning her son and trying to hold her family together, the fashion world came knocking once again. Out of nowhere, designers and brands that once celebrated her began calling for a comeback. Suddenly, her name was trending again, this time not for scandal or grief, but for a possible return to the runway. On the surface, it looked like a moment of redemption. A full-circle chance to reclaim her place as a fashion icon. But underneath, it was far more complicated. This offer wasn't just about modeling, it was a test. Could she face the same world that had nearly destroyed her? The same cameras, the same pressure, the same image-driven machine that once chewed her up and left her broken? Accepting meant reopening old wounds. Declining meant closing the door on the one thing she'd built her entire identity around. The world saw it as glamorous, but for Stephanie, it was a painful reminder of everything she had survived. Her heart was torn between the need to prove she was still strong and the deeper fear that she was stepping back into something that could break her again. Behind the scenes, even those closest to her were divided. Some encouraged her to take the stage one more time, to show the world that she hadn't been defeated. Others worried that going back would undo all the quiet healing she had fought so hard to protect. Stephanie wrestled with herself, questioning who she was now and whether the world could ever truly see the woman behind the supermodel. And just as she began to lean toward acceptance, thinking maybe this was her moment to rise, another wave hit. A private family matter, something deeply personal, was suddenly leaked to the press. Once again, her pain was turned into public entertainment. The timing couldn't have been worse. It shook her trust in everyone around her. She didn't know who had spoken or why, but it shattered what little sense of privacy she had left. Her world, already fragile, felt like it was collapsing all over again. This wasn't just a test of resilience, it became a question of survival. Could she endure being dragged back into the spotlight with her personal life on full display? Could she still protect what mattered most while carrying the weight of an identity the world refused to let go of? The modeling world was watching. Her family was watching. The media, always hungry, waited for her next step. And in the middle of it all stood Stephanie, no longer just the girl from the 90s, but a woman fighting to be heard in a world that still wanted to define her. The pressure was mounting, the stakes higher than ever. She had one chance to decide who she really was before someone else decided for her. Stephanie Seymour chose to step away from the noise. After all the heartbreak, the pressure, and the countless times she was forced into the spotlight, she made a decision not for the cameras, but for herself. She turned down the comeback offers, not because she couldn't do it, but because she no longer needed to. For the first time in her life, she wasn't chasing approval, headlines, or the perfect image. She was chasing peace. And that became her quiet victory. Instead of runways, she chose reflection. Instead of magazine covers, she chose moments with her family, moments that didn't need to be captured or shared. She didn't owe the world an explanation. Her silence was her statement. And slowly, without fanfare, she began rebuilding a life that wasn't built around being seen, but simply being. Stephanie focused on her children, her healing, and the parts of her identity that fame had long overshadowed. She allowed herself to grieve without performance, to rest without guilt, and to be human without apology. Over time, the media lost interest. The spotlight moved on, as it always does. But Stephanie remained stronger, quieter, and more grounded. She became a reminder that sometimes the greatest strength is not in returning to who you were, but in learning who you truly are after everything has fallen apart. Her story wasn't one of failure, it was one of survival. Looking back, Stephanie Seymour's life was never just about fashion. It was about resilience. About the cost of being idolized and the courage it takes to walk away. Her name still means something in the world of modeling, but now it stands for more than beauty. It stands for endurance, authenticity, and growth. She may not be in front of the cameras anymore, but her story continues to resonate. In the end, Stephanie didn't let fame define her. She faced loss, pressure, and public judgment, and still found her way back to herself. That quiet return, full of strength and grace, became the most powerful chapter of all.